Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Mostly
and
ladies.
Mostly the ladies. Hello, how are you? And welcome to episode number 85 of the Hardly Millennial podcast, where we are young, dumb, and full of opinions, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, you heard it here. As always, my name is Adam.
I'm Matthew Lynn. What's up, guys?
And welcome, everybody. Welcome. How are you, Matthew?
It's a little late, guys. It's a little late in the evening, night.
I just came home from work, dude. We were so busy at my job today.
It was a busy day today.
Oh, busy day. Everyone needed You want to know what pisses me off?
What grinds your gears, man?
Want to know what grinds my gears? I'm just gonna say I work at a mall, right? My coffee shop exists inside of a mall, so we get a lot of mall goers and mall employees that come in for their daily dose of coffee.
Sure.
So, one thing that really fucking annoys me though is there is a law here in Arizona that states if somebody comes to your business and asks for a cup of water.
Oh, yeah, you got to give it to them.
You are legally obligated to give them a glass of water because it's fucking hot here in Arizona.
Yep, it's true.
So let me tell you what people do when they come down to my coffee shop. It'll usually be people who work at one of the stores in the mall, and they'll be sent down to get water for everybody that they work
that's obnoxious.
with. So I'll have like 10 people in my line, all paying customers, getting lattes, smoothies, what have you.
Sure.
And so I'll have, 10 drinks on my line. And then you'll have somebody come down and they're patiently waiting in line. Then they'll come up and they'll say, "Can I get 8 waters? 2 of those with lemon. And in one of them, can you put in like 3 lemons?" Okay, sure, no worries. So then all of a sudden, 15 drinks turns into 23 fucking drinks.
Right.
That you have on the fucking line. And, dude, it was just that all fucking day.
Oh, I gotta love it. One of the things you'll see here in Arizona, if you go to like fast food places, is you'll see usually a handwritten sign on a piece of paper and like Sharpie, and they stick it to the soda machine, and it'll say like water cups are only for water, please.
Yeah.
Because there's really nothing stopping you from just asking for a water cup and filling it with soda.
Oh yeah.
Which happens all the time
Fuck,
here.
I used to do it.
Always. Yeah. And I mean, you're not supposed to do it, but they're not really going to stop you either.
No.
So people just do that.
No. Well, it's also one of those things too where it's like, because I mean the places they go to, what are they? They're fast food places, a Subway. You know, they have the soda machines outside of from behind the bar at least.
Right.
And it's just like it's one of those things too where they're all just young minimum wage employees. They don't give a fuck if you're taking if you're filling your 10-ounce cup with
soda.
soda.
Yeah, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Gives a shit.
But, you probably save a lot of money over the course of your life by not buying sodas. Just saying.
If you're a soda drinker.
It's $1 at a time, man.
We're not saying to do that, guys, but we're just saying it's an option.
I do that. That's all I'm saying.
I used to do that shit all the time, dude. When I was younger, I'd be walking home from school and always walking by to my house was like a Subway, and I always go in there like, "Can I get a water cup?" And I just fucking fill it with soda, and they always fucking knew what I was doing too.
I also work at a coffee shop. It's not in a mall, but it's a coffee shop. Not the same one, different one. And we are getting a soda machine. I'm very excited.
Oh, really?
Yeah, people pretty much bang the door down for Coke. So we're like, all right, we'll get you a soda machine.
We'll have because we sell, I think, like 4 different types of sodas, but we'll have like the cans, and then you can get it over ice and shit like that. But
we used to only have Coca-Cola in a glass bottle.
Oh yeah.
And it was fine, but now I have the whole fucking Mamma Jamma, dude.
Right.
I'm very excited.
Fuck yeah, dude. That's actually nice. I feel like that's
super
gonna bring
nice.
in a lot of customers too. 'Cause
Yeah.
a lot of people just want sodas. A lot of people just come in because they're like, I know this place sells sodas.
Well, and we're located on a smaller street in the town. So
Yeah.
there's a school nearby, and kids walk home from school.
Oh,
it's
that's
like a
true, yeah.
elementary or middle school. I think it's a middle school. So they'll stop in and get either water, or some of the kids have a couple bucks, and they'll get
That
soda.
sounds like it could be. It sounds like a blessing maybe in the long run with sales, but that just sounds like a curse, though. Just
I
getting
mean-
more of the middle school kids coming in. I mean, I just remember me when I was in middle school, and I wouldn't have wanted me coming in to, one of these
I think-
establishments.
I think that it bothers me less than it would bother most people,
Mm-hmm.
just because I just kind of have that mentality when I'm at work, like, whatever, I'm here
Like,
for
what the
8
fuck
hours,
ever,
who cares?
yeah.
Like getting 8 or 10 waters at once. It doesn't affect me the same way it affects you. We're a lot slower at my shop, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Middle school kids don't tip, though, which is unfortunate. They don't understand the concept of tipping.
No, one, I'm sure you'll get a lot of coming in too, asking for the, quote unquote water cups, and then
Oh, for
not
sure.
filling it with water, of course. And it's.
Oh, our soda machine is behind the counter.
Oh, okay, so they can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I fill your cup.
Different story then.
I fill your cup and hand it to you.
Can't fuck with that then.
Yeah, man. So, other than being busy at work, how else has life been?
Oh, life's been good, dude. For the most part. I'm still trying to fucking quit smoking, dude. I'm struggling so hard with that. It's such don't ever smoke, guys.
It's a bitch.
It really
It's a bitch to stop. The only time I find myself really cutting back on smoking cigarettes is my lungs will physically start to hurt.
Oh, see,
And at that point, I will usually cut back a little bit.
oh man, I'm to a point to where, like, even when the lungs hurt, it's like the nicotine cravings are just too much. I mean, I bought patches because I was trying to do it, cold turkey for a little bit, just because I know from experience and other people's experience, that's usually as far as like sustainability of, quitting
Yeah.
for a longer time, it's usually the best way to do it.
It's the hardest up front, but it's one of those things where, like, literally every minute that you stick to the cold turkey thing,
Yeah.
you are actually getting better and better. You're not
Yes.
replacing it with something. You're not
Yes.
bullshitting it in any way. You just stopped doing it.
Yes. And it's not to say that, like, the nicotine patches don't work.
Oh, not at all.
But the thing is, they only, because, like, so for those who don't know, if you use nicotine patches, in this case, like, Nicoderm's probably the most popular one. They're usually done in, like, stages. So you have the first stage patches that have the most nicotine that goes into your body, and then you're supposed to
Right.
switch to stage 2, and then stage 3, and then eventually just not be wearing the patches at all. But, like, the issue I always run into is, first of all, I'm just super addicted to them. So, like, the cigarettes, not the patches.
Right.
So if I wear, like, the patches, they will help to an extent with the cravings, but I'll still be craving a cigarette. And then the second one is
Yeah.
offered to me, I'm taking that patch off to go smoke it. You know?
We've talked about it before, and everyone always says it too. It's a good majority of the hard part of quitting smoking isn't the lack of the chemical nicotine. It's the lack of breaking up your day.
Yes.
You know, it's that part of it that's really hard. The most success I ever had was with an e-cigarette. I was able to actually quit smoking everything altogether. No more e-cigarette, no more regular cigarettes for months. And the way I did that was I started with a really high level nicotine juice, like 18 or something. And every 2 bottles that I bought, so I'd buy a bottle, then buy another one, and the third one I would drop it down 2 milligrams, so 16, and then 2 bottles later is 14.
Right.
And a bottle was about 2 weeks, so it was about a month. Every month I was dropping it 2%.
Right.
So it took me like 9 or 10 months, but finally, I think when I got down to like 4 or 6, I just stopped. I was able to just stop.
Anymore. Yeah, well, see, that's the issue I always run into with, because there was a time where even as you were living here, where I was doing a lot of the vaping also instead of, smoking cigarettes, which of course, it is better, but I run into the same issues with the vapes that I do with like the patches, to where I'll go a period of time with the patches where it's like I haven't smoked. Maybe it's 2-3 weeks in and I haven't had a cigarette, but I have been wearing the patches. And then all of a sudden I found myself in a situation with either the vape or the patch where I don't have it anymore. It could be something as simple as I forgot the vape at home, or I just wasn't able to afford more patches to go buy, whatever it is. And you think you're going to be fine because you're like, oh, well, I haven't had a cigarette in, however so long. So whatever, I should be fine now. But you forget that you're still getting the nicotine from the patches. You're still getting the vaping. So all of a sudden that craving just comes back in full swing. And unfortunately, I work with a lot of smokers. I'm around a lot of smokers. So it's like the second one is offered to me. It's like, it's just instant where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll take one.
Well,
sure.
Of course. I mean, why would you not say, sure, I'll feel better?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Come on. No, it's a tough one. Smoking is a son of a bitch.
Yeah, don't ever smoke, guys. If any of you are younger too, like if you do want to like dabble in that world, like wait until you're older. And the only reason I say that is because from what I've learned and from just knowing people who are longtime smokers, is anybody who starts smoking while they're still in like the puberty age, they're the ones who end up being the long-term smokers. And then the social smokers you meet through the years, you'll ask them like, oh, when did you have your first cigarette? And they'll be like, oh, like 1920. And it's like, all right, well, because you were already developed and everything, so it's not like locked into your mind as like, this is something that I need.
I agree. I think I've heard or was taught somewhere along the timeline of my life that I think it's 21. If you make it to 21 without ever smoking a cigarette,
then you'll be fine.
You have like a really high percent, like 90% or some odd chance of never smoking a cigarette at all.
Damn.
Like the longer you go before you try one, the higher chance you have of never trying one.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know. Most people don't start when they're older. Most people, by the time, if you make it past the development, like you said, then your brain would never choose to start doing that.
Yeah, well, and even if they do, they'll end up, being just the social smokers, right? Only doing it when they drink or whatnot. And that's what sucks with... Also, because I mean, I'm somebody who, I do enjoy to smoke when I'm like drinking and stuff like that. But I like when I'm trying to get to the point of quitting, it's like I do think at some point in my life I'll be able to get to a point where I can be a social smoker. But I mean, I think a lot of us make the mistake where we're like, oh, well, it's been 6 months. I can do it now. It's like, yeah, but you've been smoking for like 14 years. Should probably wait a little longer than 6 months, maybe a lot longer.
Sure.
But I do believe that it's possible to get to that point, but you really just have to train your body to be like, we're not getting this anymore first, and then kind of reintroduce it later in life, if you so desire.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's building a habit. Right, so you have to the same habit that you built over however many years. You have to build a new habit of not doing it.
Right,
so that it takes time.
At least with the physical habit, for sure. But
yeah, man, it's a hard one.
It is.
Just don't do it. Save yourself the trouble.
Just don't fucking do it. Guys.
Fuck the money. It's not even about the money. Just don't do it for your own health.
Yeah. So, sorry if we seem just a little slow today, guys. It's
very late tonight. I don't know if people fully grasp that concept.
Fully grasp, yeah. I worked a full day. It's a weekend. It's just...
You guys consume these at your leisure. Right? So any time of the day. For us, it's like, it's coming up on the middle of the night.
Yeah, exactly.
And
these are the days I hate the most, when I like scroll through the news and I'm trying to find like if it's like, oh, did anybody like interesting die today, or it's like, that's horrible to think, but I'm just like, I always like fight for subjects sometimes.
I don't know if you know anything about Israel and Palestine, but
no, you were telling me about that earlier, but I haven't read or heard anything about it.
Yeah, there were some quote unquote militants from the the Palestinian side, from the Gaza Strip, that shot, I read, like over 200 rockets into Israel.
Jeez.
And then Israel launched like over 100 airstrikes back at them. And it was all over the news because I guess in one of the airstrikes that Israel launched, there was a pregnant woman civilian that got caught up in it and killed.
Wait, with that many rockets, only one civilian died?
That may have been the most telling tale. It was a pregnant mother with her kid.
Yeah.
So that's the one that got all over the news, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, in general, they're pretty good about not blowing up the civilians.
Right.
Israel's side is, because that's like an actual. I have to be careful how I say this because there's all kinds of opinions on what's going on over there. But Israel has a formal, organized military, and they're part of many treaties across the world. They're very westernized, so they engage in certain rules of war generally. So they don't use gas weapons, they don't kill civilians, that kind of stuff.
Right.
From the other side, it's a less organized, less developed modern day military, more insurgency is what the word they would use. So more militia, more just regular people picking up a weapon fighting, you know, for what they believe in or whatever. So from that end, you do get some civilian casualties from time to time. Sometimes they'll just blow a whole group of people up.
Is this particular incident, though, and not to downplay it in any way, but is this really, for lack of a better term, a big deal compared? Because doesn't shit like this happen over between Israel and Palestine all the time?
I'm glad you asked. Actually, the answer to answer that question is yes. It is actually a big deal, this one. In comparison to normal, that's a large amount of strikes in one day.
Gotcha.
250 is a lot in one day. You're right in that you'll hear about, a rocket got launched into Israel.
I just hear about bombings all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and usually they don't even land in any city, or they'll land out in the desert, or they'll hit a mountain or something. And Israel will, blow up some tanks on the other side in response.
Right.
But this time they actually they blew some shit up. It's a big deal compared to normal.
Damn.
Yes, the UN's getting involved, which they always do every time there's something blows up. But they're because there's a ceasefire going on, like formally on paper there's a ceasefire between Palestine and Israel, so they're not supposed to be fighting. And that's supposed to be to make the lives of the people there better. We want to we want to resolve the conflict and not escalate it.
Well, you're never going to really resolve the conflict unless, for the Palestinian side, unless you give the Palestinians Israel, and then, vice versa. Really.
I mean, that's my opinion too. I think that they won't stop until only one side's left.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've made it this far. It's been a while.
It's so funny how, well, maybe not funny, but just how ignorant, most Americans are, I will say, to what's going on in Israel and Palestine. There was an interesting little documentary I watched once, and the documentary actually had nothing to do with Israel and Palestine.
Okay.
But there was it was like a documentary, like a experimental documentary where they basically these like filmmakers got together and said like, hey, on May 20th, 2005, film your life and then send us the footage. And they kind of just put together all this footage to see like, oh, this is what this person was doing on that day.
Okay.
Meanwhile, this is happening over here. Duh, duh. So they're going through a lot of different, people and vlogs, basically. And one interesting little segment that was on there that kind of opened my eyes up to like, it was just a small little comment that was made, but something that just opened my eyes up to like just how deep rooted the hate is over there for each other between the Israelites and the Palestinians. Is there was this young man, probably younger than us at the time, Palestinian man, who was filming, put his camera up in front of him into his apartment. And there was like this segment of like what, they gave people like questions to answer. And one of those questions is like, what's your biggest fear? Right.
Right.
And this Palestinian young man said his biggest fear was for an Israelite to move into this apartment after he had moved out of it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like that was like eye-opening to me. Like that's your concern. Like out of everything going on and because of what's happening there, that is your like when asked that question, that is your answer. I thought that was pretty astounding.
Well, I mean, it's hard to put into comparison what happened to the Palestinians after World War II when they created Israel. For an American, it's hard to really understand it because something like that would never happen to our country.
Right.
But for the sake of just trying for a second, I mean, imagine two other countries, okay, and they'd have to be big ones. So imagine, I don't know.
What, America and Russia?
Well, it'd have to be someone other than America. So let's say, Russia and another country got into a war. Okay. And at the end of it, Russia was beating up this other country so badly that everyone else in the world had to get together and had to stop Russia. All right. And they do it. And they're good to go. And now after that war's done, the rest of the world gets together and says, okay, now this other country that was getting beaten up, they need somewhere to go. So we're going to take Kansas. And that's just going to be their country now.
Gotcha. Okay.
So now Kansas is not part of the U.S. anymore. This is a really, really loose, terrible comparison, but it's the best I can do.
Right.
Kansas isn't part of America anymore. It's not a state. Everything about it is no longer under your control. These people live here now. And on top of that, if you try to do anything to these people, the rest of the world's going to fuck you up because we all have treaties with these people now.
Right.
Good luck. Bye. And then they go back across the Atlantic Ocean, back to Europe, back to, China, all the different places, and they keep living their life. We'd be pissed.
Right.
We'd be like, fuck that. We're getting Kansas back. Right? Put them somewhere else. I don't give a fuck where you put them. Just don't put them in my backyard.
Right.
Right? Is the consensus people would say.
Yeah. I'd agree.
So to an extent, that's very, very loosely pretty much what happened with Israel and Palestine.
Right.
The Jews needed somewhere to go to have a place.
But the argument with the Israelites is that the reason why they have that particular massive land is because that's supposed to be their God-given, like God gave them that land, right?
Well,
that's the whole
Israel's there.
Right. But that's what I mean. Like that's why it's that particular.
Yeah, it's the Holy Land. It's their holy place.
Yeah. Whereas before World War II, it was all the Palestinians that like.
But it's also a very holy and religious land and place for the Muslim faith. Also, there's a very, very big history that is part of that area. All the way back past before the Romans. That was all part of Rome. That was part of the Eastern Byzantine Empire later on. Then it was part of the Ottoman Turks.
Right.
So that land, what's Israel now today, has been a kingdom throughout history. They've had a king, King David. They've been a country. They've been Christian. They've been Muslim. They've been Jewish. They've been a lot of different things in that area all throughout time, just depending on who conquered it.
Right.
So it's important to a lot of different groups of people. But yeah, it is particularly very important to the Jews. That's their holy land. They have to. I think part of the religion of Judaism is to actually go and visit that place at some point in your life.
I was going to say that there's a name for it, but it's totally free too. Like they get a free ticket over to Israel because it's their God-given right to visit the Holy Land. Yeah. Right. There's so as somebody who obviously knows more about this than I do.
Oh, and I'm definitely no scholar. I'm just this is just a little bit that I know.
Yeah. Noted. And given like the loose, analogy you gave earlier with like Kansas, do you think that it was wrong for I'm assuming it was like a UN kind of decision, right, to put the Jews there.
I would assume that you're actually probably right. I think the UN was created after World War II, and it probably was
Made
them
that
who did
decision.
it. Yeah,
So
it was the winners. The
Right.
winners of World War II were the ones who made the decision.
Right. So do you agree that that land belongs to the Jewish people there now, or do you think it was wrong for them to take that land away from the Palestinians who are already there?
I think what's done is done, and that's what the world we live in now is a reflection of the choices that we've made. And legally, as far as the world is concerned, that land belongs to Israel now. That is Israel. And if you look at it as an alien outside of Earth who knows nothing about any religions and nothing about money or anything, Israel is the stronger country. Pretty much any way you want to compare strength. Okay,
Right.
militarily, economically, the state of their alliances, their trade balance, everything about Israel is a bigger, stronger country than Palestine is. So if there is a conflict, Israel will most likely win. Now, I don't know a lot about it, but I do know that there was a conflict that happened after Israel was already established. So I want to say a few decades after World War II. Okay, we're coming into gosh, I don't even know, but I want to say it's like the 70s, 80s. I could be totally wrong with that, okay? But there was a conflict where all of the nations around Israel attacked Israel.
Okay.
So we're talking about Egypt, Palestine, and a couple others all attacked Israel at once and said,
Okay.
we're going to fuck these dudes out. We're going to get them out of here. We're fixing this shit, okay? Now, I'm sure there was a UN resolution, blah, 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 all that shit. Nobody needed to come to Israel's aid. Before there was even a resolution on it, within days, literally within a few days, Israel kicked all 5 of these countries' asses, took over half of Egypt,
Right.
and when they got to the Suez Canal, which is the breaking in the land that gets you from the Mediterranean into the Indian Ocean.
Oh,
okay. There's a
okay,
canal there for Egypt, and it's very, very strategic for the world.
Okay.
America keeps a navy there all the time just to keep it safe.
Okay.
Well, when Israel got to that, the UN said, you have to stop. They made Israel stop.
They were like, chill the fuck out.
Yeah, they said, okay, you win.
Right.
And Israel said, okay, fine, we'll stop, but we're keeping this half of Egypt. We're fucking keeping it. And the UN literally said, no, this will affect our alliance and our relationship. You cannot keep Egypt. You have to give it back. And they gave it back. And then they built the Iron Dome, which is a defense system that shoots down anything that comes from the sky. It's not 100%, but it works really well.
Right.
And they basically are just ass kickers now. Nobody fucks with Israel, dude.
Damn, dude.
Yeah.
It's so funny because when you look on a world map, like they're just
Oh, they're tiny.
they're like a tip of a nail.
Yeah,
you
they're
know?
super tiny.
It's like, holy crap.
Yeah, and I mean, I propped them up a lot in what I said there, and I don't want to poo-poo the other side either, because
Right.
the other side, the Palestinian side, has a very rich cultural history. They're relatively wealthy too. I don't think Palestine is in poverty. You know,
No, not at all. I don't think so.
they don't have
either.
as many people, so their per capita is probably not so bad. But I don't want to poo-poo either side. You know, it's just the reflection of what I see going on throughout my life.
Right. It's just the way it is right now, as you said.
Well, then you got a whole other group of people there too, because just to the east of all this is Syria.
Yeah.
Just next door to Israel is Syria. And in the north of Syria is Turkey. Well, between that, on that border, there's a group of people who don't have a country right now, who used to have a country,
Yep.
and they're called the Armenians. And, I'm sorry, they're called the Kurds, the Kurdish people.
Yeah, but they came out like the same place.
They
didn't
came out of
they?
the same place,
Yeah.
but right now we call them the Kurds, and you hear a lot about
Right.
them fighting, and you hear a lot about. So right now they're considered a rebel group. They don't have a country, and they are fighting to try to carve their land out between the border of Turkey and Syria.
Right.
And it's a very iffy situation. So you hear that there's always these things about Turkey in the news, right? That
Right.
Turkey's a little bit, plays both sides of the field. They play Russia and they play America, okay?
Yeah.
Now, officially, Turkey is a NATO country. Turkey is allied to America on
Right.
paper. However, here's where it gets a little shaky. Turkey is not a big fan of the Kurdish people.
Right.
Okay? Because Turkey used to be the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire were the ones who tried to kill off all the Armenians and the Kurds. Okay? Then, nowadays comes around and they're trying to get this country back. And if they do get their country back, the Kurds, it's going to be in part of Turkey's territory.
Right.
So Turkey actively finances forces who fight the Kurds.
Yes.
However, America sees the Kurdish resistance force as an ally, and we actually give money to the Kurds because they fight the Syrians. And we are not a big fan of the governmental regime that runs Syria.
Right.
So that's why you get some tension between us and Turkey. Now, take it one little step further, and then I'll stop. Russia is friends with the governmental regime that runs Syria. So Russia protects Syria because within the country of Syria, Russia has a deep sea port that goes into the Black Sea. So it's strategically very valuable for Russia to keep the regime in power that is in power in Syria.
Right.
So, whew, that's the best of my knowledge of what's going on in that part of the world. It's a big mess.
Yeah, when, it really is. I remember when
And I'm sure I got something wrong. Feel free to comment.
Well, trust me, even a scholar in like focusing on that kind of stuff would probably get stuff wrong. I remember back.
There's just so much history in it, dude.
Well, not just history, but just like there's because like you just mentioned like 3 different groups, but at one point there were like 6 different groups.
Oh, bro, there's more than
fighting
3.
with each
You
other.
also got the Sunnis and the Shiites. I won't even get into that, but
Well, and-
that goes back way past Roman times.
Well, and I remember when ISIS was more of a big deal. You don't hear about them much more now, but when ISIS was like a big,
we recently took the
threat.
last city from them that they were holding.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
Just this last year, I think.
And but I remember watching this video once that was basically just like, all right, so we know everything happening over there right now is fucking cluttered shit, a clusterfuck, right? So we're
Right.
going to explain it to you. And it was this very nicely put together 10-minute video of just going, okay, so this is happening. This is where this came from. This is what this group is. And basically what it all came down to is the entire thing just ended up being this giant proxy war between America and Russia.
Yes.
Is really what it
literally
became.
you couldn't be
Yes.
more right. If you want to distill it down to what it actually is, it's a huge clusterfuck that involves a large portion of the world, but it really is it's a proxy war between Russia and America that goes
Yeah.
back to the Cold War.
Because
is when it
all of the
started.
groups there were funded by either America or Russia. America or Russia just weren't fighting each other. You
Now,
know?
not to say that that is where the history of it started.
No,
because
no,
the
no,
history of all this has been going on since there's been civilizations.
Right.
Okay. The history of
We just
mankind
happened,
began in the Middle East.
We just happened to really get involved when shit was hitting the fan. That's what happened. Yeah.
Oh, it's really actually a fascinating history. There's so many different groups of people down there, dude.
It is, and that's what makes it so sad at the same time.
Yeah.
Because Vince, who we've had on the podcast multiple times now, he served for our country in the army, and he was stationed over there in Afghanistan, for a couple years, I think. And he came back just telling us stories of just how they're like, not it wasn't even in an insulting way. It was just in an observing way of like just their butt fuck backwards over there. You know, their values, the way they live their life. Like he was telling me, you know, and I've heard this from
A lot of
multiple
corruption
people.
has held them back.
A lot
man.
of corruption.
A lot of corruption has held them back.
Well,
They used to be the center for science in the whole
well,
globe,
and that's
though,
what I mean.
back in the day.
You know, it was so sad to hear these kind of things, and then well, I mean,
Iran
fuck,
used to be the Persian Empire.
Yeah, I mean,
the
fuck,
Persian
algebra's
Empire.
an Arab word, you know, like algebra came from out of the Middle East, and math,
They
just
created
as you
the
said,
concept
math
of
and
zero.
science, and
The numbers we use today are all Arabic numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But you see there, that's another thing. So we consider, as Americans who are not taught very well, okay, if you're not taught about it, you consider the whole Middle East as Arabs, right? It's all Arabic. Well, that couldn't be more wrong. So you have the Arabian Peninsula, okay, which is nowadays it's Saudi Arabia, okay, Yemen, Oman, Qatar, all those little guys around the side. Okay?
Yeah.
Mostly it's Saudi Arabia. That's the Arabian Peninsula. That is where the Arab culture comes from. It's where it originates.
Right.
That's why it's called that. Now, Iran, modern day Iran, the descendants of those people were the Persians. And the Persians were not Arabic.
right.
As a matter of fact, they conquered the Arabic people and put them down. They enslaved them. So to call, I don't know if it's so much today in modern history they still take it personally, but they
Right.
probably do. If to call an Iranian or a Persian person an Arab is
They
an
take
insult.
offense. They
That's an
surely
insult.
take
It's probably
offense.
still a thing to this
Yes.
day.
Yes.
Because the Persian history is very, very proud.
yeah.
Very rich. They were the golden age of science happened in Persia.
Yeah.
You know, it was huge. They were very wealthy. Made it all the way to Greece
Yeah.
before the Spartans.
Yeah.
That was all the Persians that they were fighting. So it's there again, there's two different groups of people happening. Within all that, you have the Shiites and the Sunnis. The House of Saud is one of those. The people in Afghanistan are broken up into those two and then another one. The country of Iraq should really be three different countries because the different groups of people all want their own country there and constantly fight over it. It's a mess. And they should really, for as much as we have spent the last few decades trying to clean up the Middle East, to put it into our vision, right? We certainly don't take a lot of time to try to teach our youth about the history of what's going on.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
Why are people mad? What are they fighting about in the first place? You know, maybe the way to make the fighting stop is to fix what people are upset about.
Well, that's very true. I mean, but usually when you hear about anything happening over there in the Middle East, you know, the first thing that people jump to is like, oh, it's a religious war. You know, everyone wants Sharia law, and then some people don't. It's like, no, that's like a pocket of it.
Yeah, it's a
know?
very small piece of it.
Exactly, but I mean, hell, the 2016 elections are a perfect example of that. Of, you know, all of a sudden, you know, there was this word Islamophobia, you know, being thrown around and stuff, which I even felt was strange at the time because I had already watched this video that I just told you about that was explaining everything going on in there, and yeah, there was one of the groups, ISIS being one of the biggest ones, that was like, you know, yeah, Sharia law, we want that, you know. But all the other groups, it all had to do with like governmental shit, you know, about who was in power, who wasn't in power, you know, where
Right.
that power was distributed.
I also think that I'm not sure, I'm not very versed in it, but I don't believe that Sharia law is actually in the Quran.
Oh, no,
I don't
it's not.
think that it's actually part of the Islamic faith.
No, it is not.
I think that it is a extremist set of rules that's been made by man.
Well, I watched a TED Talks once of this. I want to say some European lady, but she made it her life. Her life career was studying the Quran. and interpreting the Quran.
Right.
And she was talking about one of the biggest issues with the original text of the Quran is it's written in such ancient text that it's very hard to interpret to modern language. And not only that, but you have to interpret it to the modern languages spoken over in the Middle East and then interpret that over into English to be able to understand.
Right.
So then so there's your first problem right there. And then she was going on about how because there's a lot of poverty and a lot of the countries there in the Middle East are third world countries, and there's a lot of people who are illiterate over there, to where it's very easy for these extremist groups to go to these poverty stricken places and preach here's what's in the Quran, when none of it's really in the Quran. One of the examples she used is one of the biggest ones that everybody's pretty aware of, and that's, if you kill yourself in the name of Allah, you're going to get, 42 virgins or whatever it is.
Right.
Which she, made very clear this is not in the Quran anywhere,
Right.
So it definitely creates this giant gray area of like, you're right. Being Muslim is not bad. It is not a bad religion. It's a very peaceful religion, as most religions are.
They pray the same exact God that Christians do.
Exactly.
Allah is literally just the name for God. It just means God. It's the same dude.
Really, the only difference with
They don't believe in Jesus.
And and that's just it. It's all similar stories too. The only real difference between all the major religions is just who they believe the Messiah was. Christians believe it was Jesus. The Jews don't.
The Jews don't think he's come yet.
The Muslims think it's David. And then, the Buddhist thinks it's Buddha.
Yeah,
but
it's all
otherwise
the same
they're all
God,
praying to the same God. It's
Same God.
just who the secondary figure is.
I think they all
really
stem from the man Abraham also. Not Abraham, Ibrahim. I think that he's the father of all modern religions.
for all of them?
Yeah, I'm not versed in the stories, but I remember learning it in high school at some point along the way. That if you are versed and you know the history of all the major religions, and I guess I should distinguish this, like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I mean by the major religions.
I think there's 4 big ones in the world right now, and it's those 3 mentioned, and Hinduism is the 4th.
Yeah, so Hinduism would not be part of this conversation.
Right, no.
But the other 3, they all stem to a man named Abraham.
Yeah.
And in different ways, he's part of all their stories. So he's considered the father of religions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. Because, when I think about the little I know about all the religions, Abraham is a constant, except for Hinduism. Hinduism's kind of its own.
Yeah, they do their own thing. They do their own thing.
But anyways, going back to like the Islamophobia stuff, it's like, I definitely understand the argument of like, you can't say it's a violent religion, but then on the other side, it's like, well, but it is to an extent also.
Catholicism has been a very violent religion in its history,
very much
too.
So. Fuck the Crusades.
I was going to say.
We killed fucking so many people in the name of God, during the Crusades.
Well, you know what a crusade for the Islamic faith is called? They have the concept of a crusade also, but they call it a different word.
What?
It's called the jihad.
Oh, yeah.
You've heard that many times, right?
Yeah.
Well, so that's why they
use
use that word.
So a jihadist is a crusader for the Islam
Essentially,
faith.
yes. And now that word, nowadays, if you tell a typical American who's not very versed in history, you say a jihadist, they would say that's a terrorist.
Right.
Okay, that's a word for an insurgent, right?
Right.
No. The ISIS or the Islamic State, the Islamic Caliphate. A caliphate is the name of, like we would say kingdom in Christianity, they say caliphate in Islam.
Right.
Okay. So those guys declared a caliphate. They said, we're a kingdom now. We're our own political entity.
Right.
All right. And they said, we are declaring a jihad for our land back, for what we think is our land, because it was taken, in this case, it's a religious war, so they believed it was taken by a different religion than theirs, so they declared a religious conflict against them,
right,
called a jihad. there were many jihads that were put against the Christians back in history also. And then we would have crusades and we would take the land back. Kingdom of Heaven is a great movie about that. I think that's about actually the city of Israel that happens to. So yeah, the word has been very misconstrued and perverted in recent times.
Yes.
It's not necessarily, well, it is, we're going to kill all the Christians. That is what it means, but it's not in the terrorist context that we put it in today. It just means it's a religious war. They're calling for a religious war.
Yeah.
The same way that Catholics did.
But unfortunately, you know, at least with like the Crusades, well, I mean, I guess it's more similar than not, because sorry, it was like
that was loud. I don't know if you guys heard that, but
yeah, it was like
someone's
a
like
weird
racing down the street
motorcycle or some shit. But like, because I feel like the biggest difference with like the jihadists is, just as I said, is they're preaching a lot of things that are, you know, made up from the Quran, where like the Crusades,
the extremists are, yes.
Whereas like the Crusades, you know, with Catholicism, you know, and Christianity, but it was basically Catholicism that was going on, was like, you know, I mean, again, there was a lot of like shit that wasn't in the Bible. I mean, like, for example, they're killing everybody, you know, thou shalt not kill is in one of the fucking commandments.
I completely understand.
But not to quite the extreme that like Sharia law, you know, implements. You know what I mean? It's like, and I just think that's why it's more considered terrorism than it is like a religious.
I know very little about it, but I'm pretty sure that the Inquisition was pretty rough. And that was a lot of lies and made up stories that were told. That was a little bit different. That had to do with... I was going to
say, that wasn't during the Crusades, though.
No. That's totally different thing. This is a little bit later in history. This is more like Renaissance times, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
And particularly hear about the Spanish Inquisition, but it happened many different places throughout Europe.
Right.
Where they went through and tortured and killed anyone who did not show faith to the Catholic Church.
Right.
They didn't really give a fuck who you were.
Which I would consider terrorism, honestly.
Oh, they were terrorists. When the Inquisitor came to town, you fucking closed your doors. You didn't want to talk to that guy.
Well, that's the same thing happening with, you know, or was happening with ISIS, you know. Also, I remember watching something with like, I think it was like Vice News or something at the time, where somebody actually like an English guy actually was able to go over, and he was like driving around with ISIS members, and they were like, you know, telling them like, oh, this is what we do here, you know, and of course they're making it seem like, you know, they're these pacifists who are just trying to, you know, spread the word of God, but you know, but it was kind of the same situation, whereas like they're driving, you know, down the street and everything, you have these people like, you know, closing the shutters and just going inside and wanting nothing to do with anything that ISIS was or is, and just It's a shame that it's all fucking happening, but here we are.
Here we are. I mean, all you have to do is just look up some history about it.
Do you think we should be getting involved as much as we are, as far as trying to like clean up everything going on over there right now? Or do you think this is kind of a situation where we should just back off and say, figure it out yourself?
I think the choices we've made throughout history have put us in a position where
we have to, right?
Well, now we're stuck in it. Now the can of worms has been opened. So we've already seen, at least once in my lifetime, that when you go over and begin the conflict and then you leave, it's just a matter of time before the conflict comes back to you.
Gotcha.
You know, Daddy Bush went over in the first Desert Storm and tried to clean house. Mission accomplished, went back home, and 10, 12 years later, however many years it was, Twin Towers happened. So you're not going to fix the problem until you educate yourself about what the problem is.
Right.
And I don't personally think you're going to fix the problem by trying to kill everyone who's an issue.
Right.
Like if you want to say, I want to end violence by killing every single violent person.
Right.
You're never going to be able to accomplish that, because as you go about that course, as you're walking that path and making decisions to make that happen, you are going to create more and more animosity towards yourself.
Right.
And those generations of people who are kids, when you're doing that, you're killing their fathers.
Right.
And they're going to remember that. And they're going to grow up and they're going to fucking hate you.
Yeah, it's
okay? So at some point, you have to stop killing the fathers because you have to stop pissing the kids off.
True.
And then
That's a good way to put it.
you have to eat it for a few decades, a few generations, and keep the peace. It's very, very expensive, and it might even cost some lives. But only through generations of peace will you instill peace,
True.
is my opinion.
Do you think we'll see peace in our lifetime over there in the Middle East? Do you think we'll see a time where things are like settled down? You know, maybe new borders are drawn at the time, but like, do you think we'll see a time where things are like, you know, that's no longer the problem place?
No.
No. I think it's gonna be going on for a lot longer.
Well, my answer to that is a religious answer, is not a logical answer.
Okay.
So my answer to that is because as long as you have the Jewish population living in that area, there will always be conflict. And I think that because in the religion that I follow, my belief is that the Jews are the chosen people, and that throughout all of history, the rest of time until the end of times, they'll be persecuted. They'll never die. They'll never go away. They'll always prevail, but they will be persecuted through all of history until the end times. Why? I don't know. I'll ask the big man when I get there.
Right.
But it's what I was taught. It's what I believe. So for that reason, logically, I don't think you'll ever have the country of Israel leave that area. I don't think the Jews are going anywhere. They've been persecuted enough. They are not going to take it again. Okay? So they're never going to leave. As long as they're there, the rest of the countries will always want to kill them. So you'll always have conflict. I think, personally.
Wow.
Which is kind of a shitty belief, I know, and I don't even like it, but...
Hey, honesty is honesty. I mean...
Honestly, yes, I think you'll always have.
And I'd be, you know, lying if I said I didn't agree with you, even just for different reasons, just because I just don't think with all the damage that's been done over there, now, not just with Israel, but just the entire Middle East in general... You know, I just think, just as you said, it's going to be decades and decades of rebuilding before you see more of a sustainable kind of culture going on over there.
Well, if you look at history and you go by the belief that history repeats itself, which most people, at least in Western culture, tend to go with that way of thinking.
Right.
Right. There's absolutely no reason in that case to logically think that Christianity would keep hold of that area of the world forever. Yeah, because all throughout time, throughout all the different decades, it's flip-flopped.
It's always changed, yeah.
And the Christians have been in control of it. Christian, Catholic, I'm putting them together.
Right.
They've been in control of that area, of the whole Mediterranean, for quite some time now.
Right.
And honestly, it's probably due to flip-flop.
True.
And as much as westernized Catholic culture is very, very powerful right now, there used to be an empire, look them up, called the Ottoman Turks.
Yep.
And they ruled over
for
everyone.
Hundreds of years.
The Ottomans come from their ancestors, before they were called the Ottomans, I forget what they were called, but they were the people who made it all the way. They took over all of Spain, and they made it halfway through France.
Yep.
They were kicking the Catholics' ass.
Oh, yeah, dude. They basically owned like half the world, the known world at the time. But yeah.
Yes, they owned everything. And it wasn't until the Catholics raised a bunch of money, got an army, and took it back. And they happened to win that war, and now we rule. Well, they rule. Sorry, I shouldn't say we. That was a horrible thing to say. But now the Catholics are in control of that area.
Right.
But there's no reason to say that Islam wouldn't take over again at some point. You know, it's always flip-flopped.
True. I guess only time will tell. Well,
I probably talked way too much on this one.
No problem, because I was funny because I thought the same thing yesterday about myself, where I was like, I feel like I talked way too much.
Yeah, but I 100% guarantee you I pissed somebody off today. I absolutely guarantee.
If we pissed you off, leave it in the comments.
Sorry if I did. Love you. We'll talk again tomorrow.
This was definitely not the conversation I was expecting to have tonight.
Not at all.
But I mean, I'm glad we had it.
I guess, kind of. I could have avoided it.
It's, well, here we are. Well, on that
I like
note,
history, guys, and I'll talk about it. So
and we'll probably talk about it again, so just fucking deal with it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening tonight. We appreciate you sitting with us through this conversation today. Remember, you can follow us on all the social media platforms, and we do have a Patreon, www.patreon.com/heartily millennial. And any final thoughts, Matthew?
we love the Earth. It is our planet. We love the Earth. It is our home.
Oh,
Type that into YouTube and watch the first video that comes up. It's very cute.
You'll love it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.